everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Restored to More. We are so excited for you guys to get to know our guests today, Chris and Steph Teague.
So I love this intro. Here we go. Out of the Dust is the name of this duo, as well as the headline of their story. Husband and wife, Chris and Steph Teague's story of downfall, divorce, and miraculous remarriage is woven deep into their artistry that has since blossomed into a worldwide ministry. Acclamation for their music has allowed them to play in hundreds of cities nationally and share their redemption story with millions globally. A multi-genre songwriting catalog reveals their hearts as true lovers of music who are broken, healed, and called to help others make sense of their suffering. Using music as their platform, they continue to tour and take steps of faith with contagious joy as they spread the message of hope to a world desperately in need. I love that. Guys, thanks for being with us today. We're pumped to have you.
Oh man, we have to live up to that intro now.
It is an amazing intro. I will say, I was like, wow, this is incredible.
Almost like somebody wrote it and sent it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're amazing writer, whoever did that.
Well, why don't we just start with your guys' story? I know we're going to interject back and forth, and we might just interrupt you. And, hey, wait, pause right there. But wow, you guys have a story, and now you're using your story to give hope to other people. Yeah, start us with your guys' story, wherever you want to begin.
Sure. Well, it starts at the beginning, like most stories. We usually kind of skip our backstory. It's fun to get into sometimes, but we usually start our story just where we met, which was we met on a mission trip, like good Christians do.
In the youth group.
In the youth group. And I mean, we kind of met in mission trip training, but not really. I think you saw me like playing guitar over in the corner, playing Why Georgia by John Mayer.
Yep, that's how it happens right there.
For sure. And I'd like just gotten out of a relationship, and I was like, you know what, God, I'm here for the right reasons. I'm not going to try to, go after girls, because that was what it was growing up for me. You go on trips and you like hang out with girls and stuff. But I was like, no, Lord, I really want. And he had other plans, as things often happen. So we fell in love fairly quickly. Couldn't fall in love on the trip though. Stephanie had a boyfriend, so had that to take care of.
Oh gosh.
And I mean, literally, I mean, like I think we knew even on the trip, like something was going on. And like we got off the bus when we got home, and I realized, crap, I don't know how to get a hold of her. Like, I don't know how I'm ever going to talk to her again. So like in front of all these people with her boyfriend, I had to like slip her my number so that we could like talk to each other later. But anyway, we did,
16.
Yeah, she did break up with her boyfriend, and we got together and we fell in love, and we were like talking about marriage, even, like, I don't know, 3 months in, we were saying, I love you, and like talking about marriage and stuff. So, just imagine 2 high school seniors talking about marriage. Pretty silly, but we were serious, and we got married when we were in college. About halfway through, we stayed in the same town and got married. And I think, like a lot of people in the South, we had a really good resume. We would be in church whenever the lights were on. We led worship in a lot of different ways, a lot of different ministries and stuff like that. So, we looked like we had it all together, but we didn't know anything about being married. I came from a home with a single parent, and didn't really know what that was supposed to look like, and started to kind of eat away at us. And I was in school for music at the time. She was going to school for education, and life was just sort of pulling us apart. We're just so busy. I think a lot of people can relate to that, just being busy and not really connecting. And things weren't really wrong. Like, there was nothing that we could really put our finger on, but I started going through this phase of my life where I was asking really good questions and starting to have doubts. But sadly, instead of like wrestling with those doubts and engaging them openly with friends or with mentors or whatever, I just kind of internalized it all. And thinking that I had to have it all together to be a worship leader or to do this or to do that, I had that mask, and I ended up putting on that mask even with Steph, because I started to sort of self-medicate and cope with a lot of that shame and guilt by the the buffet of temptations that I had around me as a young man in the music industry in college. There's just
Yeah.
any and everything you want. So drugs, alcohol, parties, friends. I was a young married man, and I was out like every night with friends. Um, it was a recipe for disaster. And that doubt became kind of full blown to the point where I just didn't even believe in God anymore. But I was still wearing the mask. I was still leading worship. I was still playing the part.
Chris, can I ask you right there a question?
Sure, please.
I think a lot of us get there when we're raised in the church, because the church isn't always a safe place to ask those questions. Sometimes it is, and that's amazing. Praise God for that. But I think, just speaking for me, that was a big journey of mine. Was like, God, why would you allow this? Or why would you not be there for me? Or for me, it was my addiction to pornography and masturbation. I didn't understand how God wouldn't, or why he wouldn't heal me if I prayed 10,000 times for you to take this away, and earnestly just like crying and bawling and be like, God, like heal me, save me. And then for him to only bring people in the church that were shaming with advice. And I'm not trying to make this about me, but I think a lot of people have these doubts and these questions. And I think we think that good Christians just bury those. Or like good Christians just don't talk about those things versus the wrestling. Would you mind sharing any of those things that you felt like you were wrestling with, or anything that you're like, man, like this was a big deal for me and God that I didn't know how to handle? Or what were those questions, those doubts for you?
Yeah, totally. So for me, it was there's a lot of intellectual doubt, like, is God good? Is the Bible true? Um, is the Bible why does the Bible perform, or why does the Bible do such a different thing than I expect it to do? And I have an amazingly robust faith now today, but I wasn't able to engage those questions. God gave us his word, but he also gave us each other. And to be able to wrestle in community and be able to talk about those things, even the things that we struggle with, when we struggle, when the enemy gets us alone and isolates us, then we've opened the door for him to take control, sadly.
Yeah.
And that was what I experienced. So yeah, a lot of intellectual doubt. I was really into science and physics and space and all of that. And necessarily a scientific materialist worldview doesn't leave room for God. And when you hear enough of that, if you don't have a robust faith, if you don't have people that you can talk to about, it's gonna slowly eat its way into the way that you think. And I have great answers for all that stuff now, but I didn't back then. And I just hid. I just kept hiding and kind of searching and looking on my own, developing a worldview apart from community of faith, and especially apart from community with my wife and intimacy there. So it all kind of culminated after. I mentioned I'm leading worship, and I'm out doing God knows what the night before, waking up, stumbling in, still high or whatever from the night before, and leading worship to a God I didn't believe in. And in that hiding, in that secrecy, in that isolation, I started to believe this lie that I would be a lot happier if I kind of ran away. If I wasn't married anymore, if I didn't have to deal with the church. Because imagine being in a place where, man, I was two completely different people.
Oh.
So I came clean one night, and I sat Stephanie down in January of 2010, and I said, I said 14 words. I said, I don't believe in God anymore, and I don't want to be married anymore.
Wow.
And we stayed together for about a month, and then she moved out, and I filed papers and walked away.
Wow.
What in the world did you do or say, Steph? I mean,
What were you thinking, feeling, all that?
Could you already, before he even had already said those words, like, was there any intuition in your spirit saying like, there's something wrong, there's something off, I feel it, I don't want to ask questions because I'm scared of what I find? Was there anything like that? Or it was like when he said all that, you were like shocked, blown away?
I would say both. I mean, I definitely knew something was going on. I think he had come to me maybe one time expressing some of his faith struggles and his doubts, but I just, again, the busyness of our lives. I was getting my graduate degree at the time. I think I was more comfortable being optimistically naive.
Yeah.
And just not pressing in.
Yeah.
Because our communication was not great, and a lot of times confrontation was not handled well on either of our ends. Neither one of us did a good job at that. And so I just assumed, you know what, we'll get through this season, we'll be all right, it's not that bad. Like, it's just, divorce is not like, that's just not a thing, right? Like, that's not, and two people who love the Lord and have committed to each other, that's just never, that possibility never in a million years would have run through my mind. So that night when he sat me down, I literally couldn't compute in my brain what was happening. As a very logical thinker, internal processor, there was a period of time that night where I didn't say anything for like probably a good solid half hour, because I just couldn't understand what was happening.
Wow.
So there's all this wrestling, Chris, that you're going through. You told Steph at some point, it was like, okay, I can't work through these questions with you, obviously, because you're so busy. And it sounds like you had nobody else to go to with these questions also. Did you try to reach out? I mean, you're involved in the church, you're worship leading. Was there, I would assume that you like, I'm going to try a little bit here, but then what happened? I mean, I don't know. I'd love to hear that part of the story.
Yeah. There was some earnest searching, and we moved from like a really big church in town to a smaller, like, community kind of church. And that move gave us community for the first time in our marriage, and in our life of faith, honestly. Where community groups were like just a huge part of the DNA of the church. We're still there today. And there was some engaging of my doubts. There was a pastor on staff who he was called like the equipping pastor, and he had really great answers and resources and things for these kinds of questions of faith. Like apologetics was just a huge. He really loved that. I think that sin had gripped my heart and my life so much at that point that even though there was like kind of an earnest, like, okay, I respect this dude a lot and I can see so much merit in what he's doing, there was also that was pulling at my heart too. So especially after everything kind of came out, there like I met with like a dozen people, I think, and everybody had tons of questions for me, and everybody wanted to help me and walk through that. But I think all through that season of life, even though the answers were there and there were people there that could help me through it, I think the damage had already been done so much by the isolation and by the fact that I some of it was just kind of a smokescreen. Like, yeah, I'm searching, I'm looking, I'm trying to find the answers, but really, I kind of already made up my mind. And for sure, after I told Steph that I didn't want to be married anymore, I hated to hurt everybody. It was really ugly and messy and hard, but it didn't really matter at the end of the day. I was very willing to listen, and I hated to like hurt people, but I just felt like it was what I had to do to be happy.
Yeah.
We hear this so much, like regardless of if they have our specific story of like pornography and stuff like that, or even just like some of our friends, like we'll hear just the women not wanting to go there because a pain, or just saying like it's not that bad, and not wanting to dive deep, because what happens when you dive deep and then it unravels everything, and then what, then it's gonna be really bad. And we talk about all the time, like how sin can be so evil and so dark, especially when you're isolated, that it can convince you of anything. And so like there's this whole fantasy world. Well, it's just gonna be better
Yeah.
if I leave. It'll just be like, gosh, can you imagine what I can do? Like I'll finally be free. I'll be able to accomplish all these things. And I think that's where we have to like, we'll hear so many stories from men and we're like, like, no, that's not where there's freedom, like
Mm-hmm.
freedom is so much greater. And it's just totally convoluted by sin and the enemy and his lies, but it looks so pretty and it's so enticing and it just looks so appetizing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can I say something?
Yeah.
I remember watching your YouTube video where you guys are explaining your story and you're sitting in the chairs, and it sounds like, Chris, that's what you were after, was this freedom. But then there's this moment after living that way for a few months, it sounded like, where you were looking in the mirror and you were saying, wow, here's what I really see.
Mm.
What was it that you, after you had pursued this life of freedom for, how long was that term? Where you guys
It was probably like we were separated for 8 months or so, 9 months before.
Until we started talking again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you're at this 8-9 month period. What are you seeing in the mirror when you're looking in there after you've pursued the very things that you thought were going to be life abundant things, right?
Yeah, I mean, uh, I think that one of the things I love to say is that the devil has really great marketing and PR and a terrible product. And after living in the dark for so long, bringing something to light, even if it's a lie, even if it's a life that's built on emptiness, bringing that to the surface is going to feel like freedom. It's going to feel like a weight is lifted, because to hide for so long and then come and telling the truth, there's power in that, right? Even if you're deceived and the path that you're going to take is wrong, to tell the truth is liberating. And so there was a season where I felt a lot better because people finally knew. But the tragedy of it all was that I was running to a terrible product. I was running to find satisfaction and happiness and acceptance in something that ultimately is empty. And you're talking about that video. After months of doing that, and truthfully, just the kind of tipping point was that I'd gotten into new relationships, and I gotten to do all more of the same, just more. That's a really big lie of the enemy, is just always a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and it's never enough. But I'd gotten everything that I thought that I wanted, and a relationship that I was in ended, and the way that it ended just really exposed myself to me. It exposed the depth of my selfishness. It exposed how deep I was willing to go to protect myself, how far I was willing to go to protect my own happiness. And when that happened, and everything sort of exploded, I was waking up not seeing like, not this, Eat, Pray, Love is about this woman who like leaves it all and lives this amazing life. And that wasn't my story. My story was that I left it all and I was completely broken and lost and alone. And God used that moment to sort of expose all of the smoke screen and the intellectual doubt that I had kind of used as a crutch and a shield, to show me that I had left in the pursuit of freedom, but I had run into the arms of slavery.
Wow.
And through that moment, God really started to engage my heart, because I didn't even know myself. We didn't know ourselves in our first marriage. And so conflict, when you don't know yourself, or you don't, it's almost impossible to have common ground. And so I really learned a lot about myself and sort of who I was. And God met me in my brokenness, in my heart, not through some intellectual argument, not through me like finally seeing, I can, not intellectually ascending to him, but through my brokenness, and him meeting me as a whole person, not just in my head knowledge. So, God was really showing up, and I'm talking so much. You guys need to
No,
hear.
this is great.
You guys have to hear from Stephanie. Her perspective is incredible. But through that season of God, just me really just pouring out and telling the truth for the first time, and telling the honest truth, not just a smokescreen, not just sort of placating. Telling the truth really brought freedom, and God poured into me, and I was opening the Bible with an open heart, and so things were leaping off the page. I wasn't coming to it with a critical eye, and it was just a beautiful season of God really revealing Himself to me in ways that I'd forgotten, in ways that I'd never experienced before, and seeing kind of this fresh season. And through all of that, He started to tell me to pursue Stephanie again, and I ignored it at first, but it got to become such a powerful message that I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so I reached out to her, and she had some different thoughts about that. But yeah, please tell.
Well, yeah, I want to hear it. I want to hear the journey of, you know, Chris was running away from God, and then God met him. But where were you at? Were you running from God? Were you running to God? What did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, I had my own journey that I needed, that I needed desperately. It just looked very different. We refer to the prodigal story all the time because Chris is just the picture perfect example of the prodigal son, and I relate so much to the other brother. Because for me, when everything happened, when my world just completely crashed down around me, it was very easy to play the victim side of it all, to feel like this is not my fault, like I didn't ask for this divorce, I did all the right things, I'm very good at being the good Christian girl, right? It's just my personality. I grew up in a home with two parents who love the Lord, who are, been married over 40 years, just this great example of what a godly home looks like. And I came to our marriage with a lot of expectations, a lot of unreachable expectations, and something we didn't even talk about. But anyway, so as I'm kind of going through every range of emotion, as you do, going through any sort of loss or trauma, God so graciously showed me that I was not faultless. I was not righteous without him. I think my sin was just easier to hide and to pretend like it wasn't there, because it wasn't out there for the world to see. Like Chris, my huge struggle with pride and control and self-reliance, you don't see that. And so it was a obviously hardest season I've ever walked through, but so necessary in my walk with the Lord, and in seeing my own sin and being aware of my own issues. And like Chris said, like learning who I even was as a person. But I think going through that, I was forced to rely on the Lord for everything, which is something I had never really had to do in my easy Bible Belt life. And so that feeling, that intimacy, that understanding that my identity was not in being this picture of what I thought a godly woman should be. Like, it wasn't in the things I was doing, it wasn't in the relationships I had, it was just in being a daughter of the King. And so it was hugely just paradigm shifting for me. And I could talk for forever about the things that he taught me, but it's one of those things.
Talk about control.
Yeah, that is a huge part for me. As far as, and people ask a lot, what helped you walk through that season, is we are contacted daily from women who are in my shoes and desperate for redemption. And first of all, I will say, if this had never happened again, like, God's still good. The journey would have been worth it. No matter the ending, he still redeems. No matter what your ending, he still redeems. He doesn't waste any of it. But I think the moment that made the biggest difference in my walk. And I am grateful that my faith wasn't hurt walking through the process. I think a lot of people either, like you said, either run away or they run to him. And I'm just grateful, whatever reason, the way I'm wired, I was able to cling to him through it. But I tried for so long to say, okay, God, like, just take this away. Like, I want to do what you want me to do. I still felt like I was stuck. And I think that's where so many people are. They're stuck to just trying so hard to fix it, to get it back together, to change its mind. But it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter how I said things. Like, I couldn't convince him of anything. And so we actually have a song, Take This, that's a little bit about this journey of like begging God to take it, but he can't take it until you let it go. And so that was the thing for me, was just trusting that, man, I can't fix this. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can trust in a God who's going to take care of me no matter what that looks like, no matter what the ending is. I just had to get to that place of just surrender. And so that journey led me all the way up until a day in August of 2010. So about 8 months after everything, Chris reached out to me for the first time and shared, like he said, that God had told him that we should be together again. And I didn't hear that from the Lord at the same time as he did. And so that night we had actually talked for the first time and just swapped stories of what God had done in our lives. And I saw just a completely new creation in him, like the Bible says that we are in Christ. But praise God for his wisdom and his spirit. I think both of us, you may have been a little disappointed, but
you have a gift of discernment and I have a gift of immediacy.
Well, yeah. So as much as I saw right in front of me the answer to these prayers that I had prayed, that our loved ones had prayed for so long, I saw that right in front of my face. I needed to know that was true heart change. And we tell everybody forgiveness, like, that's freely given. And we process through that, but trust takes time. It takes time. It should, if somebody wants to earn it back, they will take the time and show you through
and
their
that would
actions.
take months, even. I mean, we had like 6 months to 2 years or something like that is something that we've heard as far as like a time frame for rebuilding trust.
Yeah. So for us, after that night, we just agreed, let's take a few months and let's pursue what the Lord has for us. Let's involve our community. Like Chris said, we didn't do that before. We were surrounded by people all the time. That's not community though. We didn't have people asking us the hard questions. We also weren't inviting that. We weren't seeking that out ourselves either. So we did some counseling separately, came together with the same counselor, had our pastors pray and family, and all came together in agreement after a few months that if we wanted to pursue this again, that we should go for it. And spoiler, we did. We believe in a God of redemption and who can bring dead things to life. And so we started totally over, went on our first date. You didn't even want to kiss me again until we were married. We didn't quite make that one, but
I'm once again, I'm very feeling. I'm like, doesn't that feel good? You didn't even kiss, and then other feelings take over.
No, but so through that, about
we did wait though. You didn't.
That's true. We did.
We did wait.
Yeah. So about 3 months of that, of dating again and rebuilding, we were remarried in a tiny little ceremony, just our family.
Wow. That was a lot. And that was so good.
What a condensed version. It's like, wow, I feel like that could easily be 4 hours long.
But before I forget, I just think I'm so glad, Chris, you asked Steph to talk about control, because I can't, I'll just share from our perspective and our story, but all I wanted to do was to help him. I just wanted to see him be the man that I knew God called him to be. I just wanted to help him in his addiction. I just wanted to help all the things that he was going through. I just wanted to help him because I love him so much. Yeah. Yet at the same time, there's a difference between taking that mindset
Mm.
and saying, okay, because I love him so much, I'm going to now be his accountability partner. I am now going to, whatever you need, like I'm going to be the solution to your problem. Right. And we were not designed to be the solution to our husband's problem. God is the only one who can be the solution to our problem ever. And I hope women who are listening to this hear that, because we hear so many times, just like I did in my story, like, okay, well, if I could just do X, Y amount of Z, and they carry all this pressure and all of these things because they want to control the outcome. They want to control him, not from hurting us, hurting other people, hurting themselves. And we can't control them, and we can't control anything. I mean, we're not God. We are humans. And that surrender for me was when it was a game changer. And I said, okay, God, like, I am allowing him in your hands, because when he's in my hands, I don't know what to do, and I'm going to mess it up, and I'm messing me up. But when I allow him and surrender him into his hands, the freedom that I gained, realizing, okay, it's just about me and God now. Like it's nothing else, you know? And God met me. Like they both had talked about, like, that's a God that we serve. He will meet you in your pain if you allow him to. And I love that you said all those things, because it is just so relevant to our listeners and probably things that they needed to hear. So thank you for sharing that, because those are big, big key components into, I believe, finding freedom, healing, transformation, growth, everything that you can in Jesus. So awesome.
The crazy thing is that, like, addiction too, you know, addiction is at the end of the day truly about control. You know, it's about controlling a feeling or controlling happiness, or and there's certainly so much more tied up with that. But yeah, a lot of our suffering comes from our need to control. So yeah,
So
True.
good.
Yep.
So now I wish it was a story that you just got married in this small ceremony, rode off into the sunset, the white horse. It was happy
Wouldn't
from
that be
there on
great?
out. There was no more complications. If you just get married again, boom, it's all perfect. But we know that that's not your story, and I love making sure that that's not the narrative that people hear.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
guys
thank you.
tell us about that journey from then on out. I'm so glad you made a decision to get back into a relationship. What did it look like for you guys to go on that journey of rebuilding trust and rebuilding intimacy? Because there's a lot that had gone on, right, in your relationship so far.
Yeah, you want me to start? I can. Yeah, first of all, I will say we were two completely different people the second time around. So everything was brand new. Now, granted, it's brand new, but we're bringing in some baggage this time. So there, 100%, there are things that needed to be worked through, and you know, so many things starting over. But I think for us, it meant continued check-ins, you know, counseling for a while, and then even just with our pastor, you know, we did, I don't know, 6 months or something of just every other week or so, just checking in with our pastor. He would just come over, we'd talk, you know, nothing formal, but just having people aware of what's going on, and people who are further ahead of us, people who can recognize the pitfalls and the triggers that we don't even know are coming, but will ultimately come. I think one of the best tools or piece of advice that our counselor told us walking through all of that, and I think for anybody who's dealt with any sort of betrayal in any way, was he had us, as an example, he'd say, you know, I give it, what do you say, 6 months or so, 6 month period where you
3 months, just
3 months,
you set
whatever
the
it works
time
for
frame.
you as a couple, but for the person like myself, who was betrayed or left, you know, to ask any questions. Nothing is off the table. You have to answer. You have to be truthful. You know, we had to work through the fact that he was in a relationship while we were apart. Sure, it was after the divorce, but that's, anybody knows, it doesn't feel that doesn't take it away. And so there were a lot of hard conversations and a lot of answers that were hard to hear, but I think for me and my journey of healing through that were necessary. But his point was, after that season, whether it's 3 months or whatever it is, you close the book and you don't bring it up. You know, you don't keep asking, you don't hold on to that pain or you know, the bitterness that can happen. It doesn't mean that things won't trigger it and things can come back up and you deal with it when it does. But I think there's a lot of freedom that comes with knowing we are going to hash it out as much as we need to, as long as we need to during this period. But after that, we're going to move on and we're going to look to the future. But you can chime in. There's a lot more in that. But.
Well, so what was characteristic of my story was just a lot of hiding, and while uh while Stephanie can't be everything for me, like you mentioned, like some kind of accountability, or just, she's still my partner and my best friend. And to be able to uh be honest, if because like I mentioned, well, I don't know if I mentioned it or not. I didn't get immediate answers to all of these questions and doubts and things. It's just that brokenness can give you a perspective that you kind of needed, a perspective shift.
Yep.
But there was still a lot to work through, and there were still temptations that would come up. And so for me to be able to be honest with Steph about that and feel, and she would say this too, like there wasn't a lot of openness from her end in our first marriage. And she owns that. I'm not speaking that for her. So to feel safe, to feel like there's a place in my house where I can be safe, I can say anything, whatever's going through my mind, any doubts or temptations or whatever, and not be met with with a kind of a questioning eye or a raised eyebrow
or judgment. I mean, I know that was the case for me the first time around, for sure.
Yeah. So to feel safe and to be able to work through that with her, or at least to have her know what I'm going through, is huge. And I think it's good for me, and it's good for her too, to hear that and to know that, I'm not hiding anything anymore.
Well, it's exactly how God created us, right? As Adam and Eve, like naked and unashamed. And that's what you're talking about. Like if we become a safe person, then the fruit that develops is a feeling of freedom. It's the pure intimacy that God designed for husband and wife, right? And so you both are being completely intimate with everything. It's not just the good, it's the bad and the good. And it doesn't mean that you have to agree with it, but it means that you still love them regardless, and that you are there for them, and you can still validate their pain. It doesn't mean that you agree with whatever they're saying, but you can still be there for them in that season, rather than responding out of an unsafe person and judging them, criticizing them, questioning the eye, like you said, giving them an eye. And that results in that fruit is shame. And so if we feel shame, then we don't feel safe, and then we don't want to share. And then, the downward cycle, like you guys were talking about. And that is exactly what the enemy wants, because then when there's hiding, compartmentalization, no intimacy. And so I love that you guys brought that up, because that's such a key component of rebuilding trust in a relationship. You were going to say something too, Steph. So
yeah, I think I was just going to say, it definitely, we still have to work at it every day. It's, that's marriage. It's this picture of the gospel, right? Of like every day choosing to lay your life down for somebody else. And as much as there are still challenges, our marriage is completely different. Like it's unrecognizable from what it was. And I share that to say, we were just talking this morning. I think a lot of people don't even know that this is possible, and I hate that we do live in a broken world, and this unfortunately isn't everybody's ending after going through something like we've gone through, but it's possible. When two people who seek the Lord and are willing to put in the work, like, again, God is a God of miracles, and it is possible. I think people can feel so stuck and hopeless, and if our story, that's one thing we always pray, is just that our story could just bring hope, to people who maybe don't even recognize what God can do.
And I wouldn't have wanted to hear this at the time, when I was wanting to leave, but I think it's helpful to remember that as Christians, especially, it's not a Southern thing. It's a human thing. We shy away from the hard things. We want to cover them up. We want to ignore them. We don't want them to happen. But, and again, I wouldn't have wanted to hear this, and I may not have even listened. But if someone had been able to get through to me and tell me, look, I know how broken things seem right now. I know that it seems like you guys are too different, that you want different things out of life. You want to go do this. You know what? That's not okay, but it's okay. It's okay that things seem so broken right now. But as Christians, what can be so easy to forget is that God is a God who knows that we are broken. He knows that we will be broken. He knows that we will break things, but his faithfulness and his plan is to take what was meant to break us and to use it and to redirect it. Just like with Pharaoh, God actually redirects Pharaoh's evilness to his own ends so that he can set his people free. And I think that if we could learn to be better at not shying away from the hard stuff, because good gracious, hard stuff, it sucks and the world is really broken and it's hard. But if we can come and have the knowledge that we serve a God who is okay with our brokenness and wants to take and use that to make it better, because if our marriage hadn't broken apart, we wouldn't be half of the people that we are today, and to be able to shine that light for people and say, hey, look, it seems broken, it seems lost, things seem hopeless right now. But if you only knew that God could move into that space and use that to make you better than you ever thought you could be, to make your life and your situation and your heart, maybe not even your circumstances, but God can use that to change your heart and to turn you into somebody that's unrecognizable from who you are today.
Okay, you can't end on a better note than that, Chris.
Amen.
That's just like, mic drop. That was it. That's the message right there. If you missed it, go back and listen to it again. That was so good.
And that's the gospel right there too.
That's right. You guys, thank you for being with us on the Restore to More podcast. This is incredible. Can you please tell our listeners how they can hear more about your story, about your music? How can they get plugged into all that you guys are doing?
Yeah, please come and check us out. Not because, just because we need more friends. Honestly, we love connecting with people. We don't want to see social media as just like a platform for us to put stuff out there. Like, it's very, very two-way for us. And anywhere you can find us, Out of the Dust Music. So Instagram, Out of the Dust Music. Facebook, Out of the Dust Music. Our website, outofthedustmusic.com. TikTok, Out of the Dust Music. We're everywhere, and we love connecting and diving deep and even having deep and hard conversations with people. So
yeah, we definitely see what we do as a ministry first. Music is just the platform that God's given us to share the story and bring hope. So yeah, we're the ones that answer all the messages, and then we through that music we tell our story, and we tell the story of the continued struggles of just living this life. So you can
Spotify too. We do make music. I forget that sometimes.
Music is the primary thing we do, and we'd love to join you in your churches and wherever God leads us. But yeah, find us Spotify, Apple Music, all the places, just Out of the Dust.
And I'll just say that what you guys are creating is amazing to our listeners. It's ministered to us as we've sat there on our couch in the living room and just played your albums. It was like we just sat there, and I'll be honest, I was crying. I was like, wow, like this is so good. I listened to it like multiple times over and over again. Wow. And it was just healing to our souls. So thank you for what you guys are doing. Thanks for being with us. And man, keep doing it. We're so grateful for you guys. Thanks.